She was 8 months pregnant when she felt hands on her back, not helping hands, not loving hands, hands that pushed. Meredith Collins tumbled down 22 marble steps in her own mansion. Her skull cracked against the floor, her wrist shattered. Her body bounced like a rag doll while she desperately tried to protect the baby inside her. And at the top of the stairs, her husband's mistress stood watching, smiling, whispering one single word. Oops. She thought she got away with it. She thought no one saw. She thought she had committed the perfect crime. But there was something she didn't know. Something that would destroy everything. A nanny cam, hidden in the hallway, recording every single second. What happens next will shock you. Because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about a 2-year affair, a 20-year obsession, $47 million in stolen money, and a conspiracy so twisted you won't believe it's based on real events. Value statement. But before I tell you what happened, I want you to understand something important. This story isn't just entertainment, it's a survival guide. Every woman needs to know the warning signs of a partner who sees you as property, not a person. Every woman needs to understand how to trust her instincts when something feels wrong. Every woman needs to learn that falling down doesn't mean staying down. Here's what this story will teach you. How to recognize emotional manipulation before it destroys you. How to build a support network that will save your life. How to find strength you never knew you had. And most importantly, how to rise from the ashes of betrayal stronger than you ever were before. Remember this lesson as you watch Meredith's journey unfold. The person who tries to break you will fail. But only if you refuse to stay broken. Call to action now. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. Because every week, I bring you stories just like this one. Stories of betrayal and justice, stories of women who refuse to stay down, stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat and give you the courage to face whatever battle you're fighting in your own life. And if you're watching on your phone, turn on notifications so you never miss when these stories drop. Now, let me tell you what happened when that footage played in court. Chapter 1, The Fall, the last thing Meredith heard before her body hit the marble, was Sloane's whisper. Oops. One word, soft as silk, cold as ice, dripping with satisfaction. Then gravity claimed her. Time stretched into something strange and elastic. Each second lasted an eternity as Meredith tumbled down the grand staircase of the Ashford mansion. 22 marble steps. She would learn that number later. 22 steps between the woman she had been and the woman she would become. Her hands flew to her belly as she fell, 8 months pregnant. 32 weeks of growing this tiny life inside her. Every instinct, every fiber of her being screamed one thing: protect the baby, protect the baby, protect the baby. Her shoulder slammed against the wrought iron railing. Pain exploded through her arm. Her hip cracked against a step, then another. Her body twisted, curled, trying to shield her swollen abdomen from the impacts that kept coming. The crystal chandelier above her spun. Fractured light scattered across her vision like broken stars. The smell of lemon polish filled her nostrils, the same polish the housekeepers used every Tuesday. She had always loved that smell. Now, it would haunt her forever. Her wrist bent at an angle that sent lightning through her entire arm. She heard something crack, felt the wrongness of bones shifting where they shouldn't shift. The marble floor rushed up to meet her. She heard her own skull connect with stone, a sickening thud that seemed to echo through the mansion's grand foyer. The sound was wet, heavy, Final. The last image burned into her mind was Sloane Whitmore standing at the top of the stairs, perfectly still, watching, a small smile playing at the corner of her lips. Those red-painted lips that Meredith had complimented just last month at the company Christmas party. "Such a lovely shade," she had said. "It really suits you." Sloane had smiled then too, the same smile she wore now, the smile of a woman who had gotten exactly what she wanted. Then darkness swallowed everything. Yafford Chapter 2, The Awakening Meredith surfaced slowly, like swimming up through dark water toward a distant, wavering light. The journey felt endless. Every time she thought she was close to breaking through, something would pull her back down. Finally, after what might have been hours or days or weeks, she opened her eyes, white ceiling, harsh fluorescent lights, the antiseptic smell of hospital disinfectant, sharp, chemical, wrong. She tried to move, and pain exploded through her wrist. A soft cry escaped her lips before she could stop it. "Mary, Mary, can you hear me?" Harper's face swam into focus. Her best friend since nursing school. They had met over a cadaver in anatomy class, both of them green-faced and determined not to be the first to vomit. 12 years of friendship built on that moment of shared weakness. Now Harper looked worse than Meredith had ever seen her. Dark circles under her eyes, deep lines of worry creasing her forehead. Her usually perfect ponytail was disheveled, strands escaping in every direction. "The baby," Meredith croaked. Her throat felt like sandpaper. Her hand moved to her belly, still round, still there, but was it still moving? "The baby's fine." Harper grabbed her hand, squeezed hard. "The baby's perfect. Strong heartbeat, no distress. You protected her. Mary, even falling, even with everything, you protected her." Tears leaked from the corners of Meredith's eyes, relief so intense it physically hurt. Then she felt it. A tiny kick against her palm, strong, insistent, demanding attention the way her daughter already did, even before being born. "What happened?" Meredith whispered. The memories were foggy, fragmented. She remembered stairs, someone behind her, the click of heels on marble, and that word, that horrible, satisfied word. "You fell," Harper said carefully. "At the mansion, down the main staircase. Lucia found you at the bottom. She called 911. Where's Preston?" Something flickered across Harper's face. A shadow. A darkness. "He's on his way. On his way." Meredith tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. "How long have I been here? 6 hours?" 6 hours. Her husband had been unreachable for 6 hours while she lay unconscious in a hospital bed, while their unborn daughter's life hung in the balance. Something cold settled in Meredith's stomach, something that had nothing to do with her injuries. The door opened, and Dr. Catherine Brennan entered, calm, competent, the kind of doctor who made you feel safe just by walking into the room. "Mrs. Ashford, good to see you awake." She checked the monitors. "You have a concussion. Your left wrist is fractured in 2 places. You have multiple contusions, 3 bruised ribs, and some superficial lacerations that required stitches. But the baby. Your daughter is remarkably resilient. No signs of distress. No indication of any trauma whatsoever." Dr. Brennan paused. "Honestly, Mrs. Ashford, I've seen falls from much shorter heights end in tragedy. The fact that you and your baby survived is nothing short of miraculous." "Doctor," Harper said quietly, "the police are here. They want to speak with her." Meredith's heart stuttered. "Police? Why?" "There are some questions about your fall." About how it happened. Dr. Brennan chose each word carefully. They need your statement. I fell down the stairs. That's what happened. Mary. Harper leaned closer. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Lucia found something. On the nanny cam. The nanny cam. Preston had insisted on installing it last month. For when the baby came, he said, they had tested it in the upstairs hallway because the nursery wasn't finished yet. The upstairs hallway, where the stairs began, where she had been standing before she fell. What did she find? Before Harper could answer, the door swung open again. Preston strode in like he owned the place, which, technically, he did. Meredith. He crossed to the bed in 3 long strides, pressed a kiss to her forehead. His lips were cold. His breath smelled like coffee and something else. Something floral. Familiar. Thank God you're all right. I came as soon as I heard. 6 hours, she said quietly. It took you 6 hours. I was in meetings. My phone was off. You know how important the quarterly review is. His hand found hers. The gesture felt automatic, rehearsed. I'm here now. That's what matters. Meredith studied her husband's face. Square jaw, blue eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. She had fallen in love with that face once, had trusted that face with her life. Now she searched it for something she couldn't name, something that should have been there and wasn't. Mr. Ashford. A man appeared in the doorway, broad shoulders, tired eyes, a badge clipped to his belt. I'm Detective Thomas Brennan. I have some questions about your wife's accident. Of course. Anything to help. Actually, sir, I'd like to speak with Mrs. Ashford alone first. Standard procedure. The detective held up a tablet. We have footage we'd like her to review. Preston went still. The stillness caught Meredith's attention more than anything else. Her husband was never still. He was always moving, talking, commanding. He couldn't sit through a movie without checking his phone. But, in that moment, he froze. Footage. From where? The nanny cam in the upstairs hallway. Your housekeeper retrieved the recording and contacted us. Preston's eyes darted to Meredith, then away. Quick. Guilty. I'd like to see it, Meredith said. Whatever it is. I want to see it. Detective Brennan pulled a chair closer, sat down, turned the tablet around and pressed play. The footage was grainy, black and white, but clear enough. She saw herself standing at the top of the grand staircase, her hand on the railing, her phone in her other hand. Then a figure appeared behind her. Sloane Whitmore, 29 years old, blonde, beautiful in that sharp, angular way. Preston's executive assistant for 3 years. On the screen, Sloane moved closer. Her lips were moving, saying something. Her expression was clear. Venom, pure, undiluted hatred. Meredith watched herself turn, saw the confusion on her own face. Then Sloane's hands shot out. The push was deliberate, forceful. No accident. Sloane Whitmore placed both palms flat against Meredith's back and shoved with all her strength. The tablet showed Meredith falling, tumbling, her body bouncing off steps like a rag doll. Then Sloane's face filled the frame. She had moved to the edge of the stairs. Looking down, watching, her lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. Then the expression changed. Horror replaced satisfaction. Her mouth opened in a practiced scream. She ran down the stairs with theatrical urgency. No one would have known. Except the camera knew. The tablet screen went dark, and Preston was staring at the tablet with an expression Meredith had never seen before. Not horror, not rage, not shock, fear. Preston Ashford was afraid, but not afraid for her, afraid of what this revealed. "Where did you get that?" His voice came out strangled. "That's private property. Your housekeeper provided it voluntarily, sir." This is clearly a misunderstanding. Sloane was probably trying to catch her. The angle makes it look wrong. Meredith heard the words, but they didn't make sense. He wasn't defending her. He wasn't demanding Sloane's arrest. He was protecting Sloane. "You knew," Meredith said. Preston finally looked at her, really looked at her. And in his eyes, she saw everything she needed to know. The guilt, the calculation. "Meredith, let's not do this here." "How long?" "This isn't the time or place." "How long, Preston?" He ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture of frustration, the same gesture he made when she asked too many questions about his schedule. She had always apologized when he made that gesture, had backed down, not anymore. 2 years, he finally said, give or take. 2 years, 730 days of lies. "Get out," she said. "Meredith, let me explain. It's not what you think. Detective Brennan, I want to press charges. Assault, attempted murder, whatever you can make stick." "Already done, Mrs. Ashford. Miss Whitmore was taken into custody an hour ago." Preston was still standing there, still taking up space. "I said get out. We need to talk about this privately." "No, nothing is between us anymore. You chose her, over me, over our daughter. There's nothing left to discuss." Harper made a sound, low and dangerous. "You need to leave, now, before I call security." Ah. Preston's face cycled through emotions. Anger, calculation, forced calm. "This isn't over. Meredith!" He walked out without looking back. The door clicked shut, and Meredith finally let herself cry. First value lesson. Here's what Meredith didn't know yet, but you need to understand right now. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Preston's first reaction to seeing his pregnant wife pushed downstairs wasn't horror or rage. It was protection of the woman who pushed her. That single moment revealed everything about who he truly was. Too many women make excuses for behavior that should be deal breakers. He was stressed. He didn't mean it. He'll change. No. When a man's instinct is to protect his mistress over his injured pregnant wife, that's not a bad day. That's his character. And character doesn't change. Trust your observations. Trust that sick feeling in your stomach. Trust the voice in your head that says something is wrong. That voice exists to protect you. Listen to it. Chapter 3. The Evidence. 3 days passed in a blur of hospital routine. Harper stayed through all of it, sleeping in the uncomfortable plastic chair, bringing real coffee from the good cafe, screening phone calls and turning away visitors who had seen the news coverage, because there was news coverage now. Tech mogul's pregnant wife, injured in fall. Mistress questioned in connection with assault. Preston didn't come back. He texted once. A long message about needing space, about how complicated things were, about how 20 years of friendship with Sloane couldn't just be thrown away over one moment of poor judgment. 20 years of friendship. He had known Sloane for 20 years. Since before he met Meredith, since before everything, she had never known. In 6 years of marriage, he had never once mentioned it. She deleted the message without responding, blocked his number. On the third morning, Detective Brennan returned. Sloan Whitmore's arraignment was yesterday. She's out on bail, $250,000. Your husband posted it within the hour. Meredith nodded. She had expected that. She's still claiming it was an accident. Her lawyer's going with the defense that she was trying to catch you when you tripped. The detective's expression made clear what he thought of that argument. But we had our tech people enhance the audio from the recording. They were able to isolate her voice, clear as day. She said something before she pushed you. Oops. Detective Brennan blinked. You remember. I remember everything. I just didn't understand what I was remembering until I saw the footage. The audio will help the prosecution significantly. That one word establishes intent. Will it be enough? I've seen cases with less evidence go all the way, but I should warn you, her attorney is expensive, one of the best criminal defense lawyers in the state, and your husband seems willing to fund a vigorous defense. He paused. There are already stories circulating about you, about mental instability, about hormones making pregnant women paranoid. Of course, Preston was fighting back. That was what he did. Control the story, control the perception. I spoke with Lucia Rodriguez. Detective Brennan continued. Your housekeeper. She had additional information she thought you should know. Additional information. The nanny cam wasn't the only recording device in your home. Apparently your husband had cameras installed throughout the mansion. The footage backs up to a cloud server. Lucia saved copies of several recordings. Before Meredith could ask what that meant, the door opened. Harper returned with coffee. Behind her was Lucia herself, small and solid, with kind eyes and capable hands. She looked nervous, uncomfortable, like someone about to deliver bad news. Mrs. Ashford. Lucia clutched a USB drive in her fingers. I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. I didn't know how. Told me what? I was let go. Yesterday morning, Mr. Ashford called me personally, told me if I spoke to anyone about what I had seen in the house, there would be consequences. Lucia's lip trembled. But before I left, I made copies of everything, not just the day you fell, all of it. She held out the USB drive like an offering, like a grenade with the pin already pulled. Harper took it, connected it to her laptop. The screen filled with file folders, dates going back months, hundreds of hours of footage. What am I looking at? The truth, Lucia said quietly. About what's been happening in your home while you were away? Harper clicked on a file at random. September 15th. The master bedroom. Meredith's bedroom. The room she had decorated herself. Her wedding photo on the nightstand. Her grandmother's quilt at the foot of the bed. Sloan was in the frame. She was wearing Meredith's silk robe, the blue one with the embroidered cherry blossoms, a gift from her mother for her 30th birthday. Her mother had spent weeks looking for it, had it shipped from a specialty store in Kyoto, had wrapped it with hands that were already trembling from the illness that would take her 6 months later. Sloan was sitting at Meredith's vanity, using Meredith's hairbrush, the silver one that had belonged to her grandmother, spraying Meredith's perfume. Preston walked into the shot. His shirt was unbuttoned, his feet bare. She won't be back until Tuesday, he said. His voice was casual, comfortable. Stop worrying. You can relax. I'm not worried. I just wish you'd tell her already. I'm tired of sneaking around. The timing has to be right. After the baby's born, after I have an heir, then we can make this official. Sloan turned in the chair. And what about her? She'll take a settlement. Meredith isn't complicated. She's practical. She'll do the math and realize it's better to take the money than to fight. Preston loosened his tie. She's been useful, a good wife for the public image. But let's be honest, Sloane, the passion died years ago. Useful. The word hit Meredith like a physical blow, harder than the marble floor. She had been useful, like a tool, like an appliance. Keep playing, she heard herself say. I want to see all of it. Over the next hour, she watched her marriage unravel in recorded fragments, Sloane and Preston in every room of the mansion, laughing together at inside jokes she didn't understand. Planning for a future that didn't include her, discussing the divorce like it was a business transaction. In one clip, dated 3 months ago, Sloane's voice turned cold. The pregnancy complicates things. Preston was at his home, office desk. I know. I tried to convince her to wait another year, but she was getting suspicious, starting to ask questions. Dich has. So you got her pregnant to stop her from asking questions? I got her pregnant because it was easier than explaining why I didn't want to, and because a child ties her to me, makes her less likely to leave. There's going to be a baby. Preston, your child, my heir. That's different. The Ashford name needs to continue. Meredith comes from good stock. She'll produce a healthy heir, and then she'll be taken care of. Taken care of. Like she was a problem to be solved. Sloane moved closer to the desk. And if I don't want to wait 9 more months, then you'll have to learn patience. I've been patient for 20 years. Preston, there are other options. Sloane's voice dropped, darker, colder. Pregnancies fail all the time. Accidents happen. Women fall downstairs. The room was silent. Meredith watched Preston's face on the screen, watched him consider what Sloane was suggesting, watched him weigh the options. Let's not go there, he finally said. Not yet. Not yet. Not, that's insane. Not, I would never let anything happen to my wife. Just not yet. Chapter 4. The Alliance Second Value Lesson. Listen carefully. Because this lesson might save your life, you cannot survive betrayal alone. You need people. You need a network. You need women who will stand with you when the world tries to convince you that you're crazy. Meredith had Harper, she had Lucia, and she was about to reconnect with someone she had pushed away years ago. If you're watching this and you've isolated yourself from friends and family because your partner made you feel like they were the problem, wake up. That isolation is by design. Abusers cut you off from your support network so you have no one to turn to when they show their true colors. Rebuild those bridges now, before you need them, because you will need them. That evening, sitting in Harper's small apartment, surrounded by evidence, Meredith made a phone call she had been putting off for 4 years. The phone rang 3 times. 4, 5. Hello. The voice was cautious. Then, recognition dawned. Meredith. Hi, Louise. Silence stretched across 400 miles and 4 years of estrangement. I saw the news. Louise finally said, the arrest. The assault charges. I've been watching the coverage every day, waiting for you to call. I should have called sooner. Yes, you should have. A pause. Are you okay? The baby. We're alive, both of us. Meredith's voice cracked. Louise, you were right. About everything. About him. About the marriage. You tried to tell me and I wouldn't listen, and I said terrible things. And I chose him over you, and I'm sorry. The words tumbled out. 4 years of regret, compressed into a few sentences. Louise was quiet, for a long moment. "I'm already on a flight," she finally said. "I land at 8 tomorrow morning. Just tell me where to find you." Louise arrived the next morning with a suitcase, a laptop bag, and a determination that Meredith remembered from their childhood. "You look like hell," Louise said by way of greeting. Then she pulled Meredith into a hug that lasted a long time. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner. I wasn't ready to hear it. I wasn't ready to see what was right in front of me. But you see it now. That's what we work with." Louise had news of her own. "I'm a lawyer now, family law, helping people just like you get out of marriages just like yours. You did. I did. All those years of not speaking, I had to do something with all that anger." Louise smiled. Helping other people leave their terrible husbands seemed like a decent way to channel it. She had also brought a name, Grant Hollister, the best divorce attorney in the city. "He's expensive, but he's worth it. He doesn't back down from anyone." Grant Hollister's office smelled like leather and old money. Mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, degrees from Yale and Columbia, a corner office on the 47th floor. He was in his late 40s, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who looked like he had never lost a fight in his life. "Mrs. Ashford." He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. "I've reviewed everything. The footage, the police reports, the recordings your housekeeper provided." He folded his hands on the desk. "In 23 years of family law, I've never seen anything quite like this. Is that good or bad? For your case. Very good. For your husband and his mistress, catastrophic." He slid a thick folder across the desk. "This isn't just about divorce anymore. This is about criminal conspiracy, fraud, attempted murder. And if my suspicions are correct, we're also looking at significant financial crimes. Financial crimes? I've retained a forensic accountant, Margaret Chen, FBI for 15 years before going private. She's been looking into Ashford Technologies books." He paused. "Some irregularities have already emerged. Offshore accounts, unusual transfers, invoices for services that were never rendered." "How much are we talking about?" "So far, approximately $47 million that can't be accounted for, and I've only scratched the surface." Meredith absorbed this. Her husband, the man who lectured her about household budgets and questioned every purchase, who made her feel guilty for buying new furniture for the nursery. He had been stealing from everyone while making her beg for grocery money. "What happens when you report this?" "The SEC will get involved. The FBI, probably. Financial crimes of this magnitude don't go unnoticed once they're exposed. Prison time. Significant prison time." "Keep digging," she said. Chapter 5. The Confrontation. Preston's mother arrived 3 days later. Vivian Ashford was 65 years old, silver-haired, and draped in quiet wealth. Chanel suit, Hermes scarf, pearls that had been in the family for 4 generations. She showed up at Harper's apartment without calling first. "Meredith, we need to talk." Meredith was 8.5 months pregnant, covered in fading bruises, with a cast on her wrist. She was wearing sweatpants and one of Harper's old t-shirts. Vivian looked at her with something between pity and disdain. "May I come in?" "No." The word surprised both of them. Meredith had never refused Vivian anything, not once in 6 years. "I've come to make you an offer. Walk away from all of this, the divorce, the criminal investigation, all of it. You'll receive $2 million, a clean break. And in return, you sign a non-disclosure agreement. You decline to testify against Sloan. You tell the police you don't remember what happened. Vivian's smile was thin, sharp. Everyone wins. Does Preston know you're here? Preston is being foolish, emotional. He's not considering the family's reputation. Vivian stepped closer. I'm trying to help you. Meredith, $2 million is more than you would ever get in a divorce settlement. Your son's mistress pushed me down 22 marble steps. An accident. A moment of passion. She tried to kill my baby, your grandchild. The child is fine. No permanent damage was done. Vivian waved her hand dismissively. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. I have video footage of her pushing me, audio of her planning it weeks in advance. Footage can be manipulated. A good lawyer can make this very complicated for you, very expensive. Vivian's voice hardened. You don't want to fight the Ashford family. Meredith, we can tie you up in court for years, drain every penny you have. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you a way out. She pulled out a check, pre-signed, $2 million. Take it. Walk away. Meredith looked at the check. More money than she had ever seen. Enough to buy a house, start a business, send her daughter to the best schools. All she had to do was let Sloan walk free. Let Preston escape consequences. You know what I keep thinking about, Meredith said quietly. The nanny cam. We installed it for the baby, to protect her. And it captured the woman your son's been sleeping with, pushing me to my death. She looked up. That's irony, isn't it? Or maybe it's justice. Meredith, be reasonable. Your daughter-in-law is standing in front of you with a broken wrist and bruises on her body. And you're asking me to be reasonable. Meredith's voice was steady now. Cold. No, I'm not taking your money. I'm not signing anything. You'll regret this. Maybe. But I'll be able to look my daughter in the eye and tell her, I did the right thing. She stepped back. Goodbye, Vivian. The next time we speak, it will be through lawyers. The door clicked shut. Meredith stood there, shaking, her heart pounding. Harper appeared from the kitchen. That was amazing. I know. $2 million. Mary. I know. And you just closed the door in her face. Meredith laughed. It was a strange sound, but underneath the hysteria, something stronger. I did, didn't I? Third value lesson. Here's what Vivian Ashford didn't understand. Some things aren't for sale. When someone offers you money to stay silent about abuse, they're not being generous. They're trying to buy your dignity. They're putting a price tag on your self-respect. And here's the truth they don't want you to know. Your silence isn't worth any amount of money. Because the moment you take that check, you become complicit in your own destruction. You become someone who can be bought. And they will use that against you for the rest of your life. Stand your ground. Refuse the bribe. Choose justice over convenience. The money they offer you will run out, but the regret of staying silent will last forever. Chapter 6. The unexpected ally Malcolm Foster reached out 2 days later, Preston's former business partner, the man Preston had pushed out of the company 3 years ago. They met at a coffee shop downtown. Malcolm was in his mid-40s, tired eyes. He looked like a man who had been carrying a heavy burden for far too long. I tried to warn people, he said. When I first noticed the irregularities in the books, the offshore transfers, the fake invoices, I went to the board. What happened? They didn't believe me. Preston had them all convinced I was the problem. Bitter. Jealous. Malcolm's jaw tightened. He told them I was having personal problems, that I was drinking. He destroyed my credibility completely. I'm sorry. He destroyed more than my credibility. My wife left me. She believed him, over me. His voice cracked. I've been alone for 3 years, watching from the outside while he got richer and more powerful. Why didn't you go to the authorities? I tried, but I didn't have enough evidence. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a thick manila envelope. So I've been gathering, documenting, waiting for someone else to see what I saw. He slid the envelope across the table. Everything I've collected over 3 years. Bank records, email exchanges, internal memos. He met her eyes. I couldn't do anything with it alone, but with your footage, your lawyer, your willingness to fight. He paused. Maybe now we can finally bring him down. Why help me? You don't know me. Because I have a daughter, too. She's 20 years old now, and she still believes her father is a failure, a liar. He swallowed hard. I want her to know the truth. I want her to know I was right all along. Meredith understood that, the desperate need to be believed, to have your reality validated. Then let's make sure she knows. Let's make sure everyone knows. In Chapter 7, The Trial. The criminal case against Sloan Whitmore moved faster than anyone expected. The enhanced audio from the nanny cam, the phone call recording where she discussed making sure Meredith had an accident, the testimony from Lucia, premeditated, attempted murder of a pregnant woman by the mistress of her husband. The media loved it. Tech mogul's mistress charged with attempted murder. The woman behind the stairs inside the triangle that turned deadly. The trial began on a cold Tuesday in November. Meredith sat in the front row of the gallery, 9 months pregnant now. Harper flanked her on one side, Louise on the other. Her due date was 2 weeks away. Dr. Brennan had advised against the stress of a trial. She came anyway. She needed to see this through, needed to look Sloan Whitmore in the eye. Sloan entered the courtroom in a pale blue dress, conservative, modest. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her makeup was minimal. Nothing like the woman in the footage who had smiled after pushing a pregnant woman down the stairs. The prosecution opened with the footage. The entire courtroom watched. Meredith falling, tumbling, landing in a heap. Then Sloan's face, that smile. One juror, a middle-aged woman, actually gasped. Then came the enhanced audio. Oops. Soft, clear, unmistakable. The phone call recording followed. Sloan's voice, discussing accidents, how pregnant women fall all the time. By the end of the first day, Meredith could see it on the jury's faces. The shock, the disgust. Day 2 brought the medical testimony. Dr. Brennan detailed Meredith's injuries with clinical precision. A 22-step fall onto marble has a mortality rate of approximately 60%. The fact that Mrs. Ashford survived with the injuries she did is remarkable. The fact that her pregnancy survived is nearly unprecedented. Day 3 was Lucia's testimony. Because I knew what I had seen was wrong, Lucia said. When I found Mrs. Ashford at the bottom of those stairs, I knew someone had done this to her, and I knew if I didn't save the evidence, it would disappear. These people have money. They make things disappear. Day 4 was Preston's testimony. He took the stand, looking like the wealthy executive he was, confident, polished. Mr. Ashford, how long have you been having an affair with the defendant? Preston's jaw tightened. Approximately 2 years. And were you aware of Ms. Whitmore's feelings toward your wife. I knew Sloane was impatient, but I never imagined she would do anything violent. The prosecutor pulled out a transcript. Read directly from it. Mr. Ashford, in this recording, Ms. Whitmore suggests that pregnancies fail all the time, accidents happen, and your response was, quote, "Let's not go there." The prosecutor looked up. Let's not go there. Not, that's insane. Not, we need to call the police. Just, let's not go there. As if murder was an option you were declining, not an atrocity you were condemning. Preston's face had gone pale. Day 5 was Sloane's testimony. She took the stand in tears. I never meant to push her. I was trying to talk to her. She turned around suddenly and lost her balance. I reached out to catch her, but I was too late. And the word oops, I was in shock. It just came out. And the phone call where you discussed making sure she had an accident, I was venting. To my mother, everyone says things they don't mean when they're frustrated. And the smile, after she fell, I don't remember smiling. Maybe it looked like a smile, but it wasn't. The prosecutor approached. I'd like to play the footage one more time. The screen lit up again. The courtroom watched, Meredith falling. Sloane's face filling the frame, the unmistakable curve of her lips. Ms. Whitmore, you're asking this jury to believe that smile was panic. Sloane's composure cracked, a flash of something hard and angry beneath the tears. You don't understand what it was like. 2 years of waiting, 2 years of promises. Her voice changed, hardened. She had everything I wanted. The house, the name, the husband, everything I had been promised for 20 years. And she didn't even appreciate it. She was so oblivious, so trusting. It was pathetic to watch. The courtroom went absolutely silent. Sloane seemed to realize what she had said. Her eyes widened. She looked at her lawyer, who had his head in his hands. No further questions, the prosecutor said. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. On the count of assault with intent to cause bodily harm, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree against Meredith Ashford, we find the defendant guilty. If on the count of attempted murder in the first degree against the unborn child of Meredith Ashford, we find the defendant guilty. 3 guilty verdicts. Sloane Whitmore was going to prison. That night, Meredith's water broke. 12 hours later, Eleanor Meredith Collins was born. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 10 perfect fingers, 10 perfect toes, perfect, healthy, alive. Meredith held her daughter for the first time and felt something crack open inside her chest. All the grief, all the anger, all the fear. It didn't disappear, but underneath it, pushing up like a flower through concrete, was love. Pure, overwhelming. Hi, Eleanor, she whispered. I've been waiting so long to meet you. So Saints. Chapter 8. The Reckoning 4th Value Lesson. Meredith named her daughter Eleanor after the judge who presided over her divorce proceedings, a woman who saw through Preston's lies and ruled with clarity and compassion. Here's what that choice represents. Sometimes the people who save you aren't the ones you expected. Sometimes your heroes are strangers who choose to do the right thing when they could have looked away. Find those people. Honor them. And when you have the chance, be that person for someone else. 3 months after Eleanor was born, the divorce was finalized. The federal investigation into Preston's finances has expanded significantly, Grant said. Charges are expected within the month. Between the embezzlement, the the tax fraud, the bribery, and the conspiracy charges. He's looking at 15 to 20 years. Good. The divorce settlement gives you primary custody of Eleanor, full ownership of the properties you're legally entitled to, a significant portion of the marital assets that weren't frozen by the federal government. What does he get to keep? Legal fees, federal prison, the consequences of his choices. Eleanor stirred in her carrier, made a small sound, settled back to sleep. Preston's eyes, that was the bitter truth she lived with every day. Eleanor had her father's eyes, would always have her father's eyes. What happens now? Meredith asked. Now you rebuild, create a new life for you and your daughter. Grant stood, walked to the window. I've seen people come out the other side of situations like this stronger than they went in, more themselves than they ever were before. You think I'm one of those people? I think you've already proven you are. Meredith, she corrected. Just Meredith. No more Ashford. I'm going back to Collins. That night, alone in the small apartment, Meredith couldn't sleep. She sat in the dark with her laptop open, the cursor blinking on a search page. She typed, "Signs of emotional abuse in marriage." The results filled the screen. Checklists, articles, personal stories. She read them all, hour after hour, recognizing herself in every paragraph. Isolation from friends and family. Check. Financial control and restriction. Check. Gaslighting and making you doubt your own reality. Check. Making you feel crazy for noticing things that were actually happening. Check. She had been living in a carefully constructed prison, and she hadn't even known the bars were there. At 3 a.m, she typed something else, how to know if you were being gaslit. The answer was devastatingly simple. If you constantly questioned your own perception of reality, if you apologized for things that weren't your fault, if you felt confused and destabilized all the time, Meredith had done all of those things. For years. She hadn't been paranoid, she hadn't been irrational, she had been right, her baby kicked, strong, insistent. I know, little one, Meredith whispered. I'm going to figure this out. For both of us. Chapter 9. The Healing. A year passed. Meredith watched it unfold like a slow-motion film, days turning into weeks, weeks into months. Eleanor learning to roll over, to sit up, to crawl, to take those first wobbly steps. She had bought a cottage near the coast, 3 hours from the city where her old life had collapsed. White walls, blue shutters, a wraparound porch where she could watch the sunset. The consulting business started almost by accident. A friend of Harper's needed help with organizational strategy. Meredith had good ideas. That friend referred another friend, then another. Before she knew it, she was building something that was entirely hers. She dropped Ashford officially, went back to her maiden name, Meredith Collins. It felt like putting on a comfortable old sweater she had forgotten she owned. Lucia came to help with Eleanor 3 days a week. The connection between them had deepened into something like family. You need to get out more, Lucia said one morning. When was the last time you did something just for yourself? I went to the grocery store yesterday. That doesn't count. I bought myself fancy cheese. Meredith, there's someone, she admitted. Harper's been trying to set me up for months. A pediatrician at her hospital. David Chen, recently divorced himself. And I've said no 4 times. I'm not ready. Lucia nodded. Maybe you're not ready for a relationship, but maybe you could have coffee. Just coffee. See if he makes you laugh. She thought about it for 2 weeks. Then Harper visited, and she brought Dr. David Chen with her. David was not what Meredith expected. She had braced herself for charm, for confidence, for the kind of polished charisma that Preston had deployed. Instead, David was quiet, thoughtful. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He played with Eleanor on the floor for 20 minutes. He helped clean up after dinner without being asked. He complimented her cottage without condescension. "Your daughter is wonderful," he said when Eleanor finally tired herself out. "She has your smile. Everyone says she looks like her father. Maybe the shape of her face. But the smile, that's all you... Harper told you about everything. She told me you've been through something that would have broken most people, and that you came out the other side with your kindness intact." He paused. "I'd like to get to know that person. If you're willing." "Coffee?" she said finally. "We could start with coffee." Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into walks on the beach. Walks turned into long conversations about everything and nothing. David didn't push, didn't pressure, just showed up consistently, day after day. "I'm terrified," she admitted one evening. They were sitting on her porch, watching the sunset. "Of what? Of everything? Of trusting someone again. Of being wrong again. Those are reasonable fears, the kind that keep you safe. But they also keep me alone. They don't have to." He was quiet for a moment. "I can't promise I won't hurt you, but I can promise to be honest, to communicate, to treat you as an equal." He looked at her. "And I can promise to be patient, for as long as you need." Meredith felt something shift inside her. That wall she had built around her heart. A crack was forming. "I don't know if I'm capable of loving anyone again. Then let me remind you, one day at a time." She didn't pull away. Chapter 10. The Victory. 2 years after the fall, Meredith stood on the porch of her cottage and watched her daughter run through the garden. Eleanor was 2.5 now, all wild curls and endless energy, chasing butterflies through the flowers. The garden had been transformed. Roses climbing the trellis, lavender lining the pathway, a stubborn patch of sunflowers that Eleanor had insisted on planting herself. "She's going to be a force of nature," David said, stepping out onto the porch with 2 cups of coffee. "She already is." Preston's trial had concluded 6 months earlier, convicted on 12 counts, sentenced to 18 years. When she read the news, Meredith felt nothing. Maybe that was the strangest part. She had expected to feel something when he finally faced consequences. But there was just peace. "I got a letter today," she said quietly. "From Preston's lawyer, another appeal on custody. What are you going to do? Give it to Grant. Let him handle it the way he's handled all the others." She tucked the envelope away. "Preston can file appeals until he's 100 years old. It won't change anything." David reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. Meredith's heart stopped. "I was going to wait," he said. "Until dinner. Until the perfect moment." He opened the box. A simple diamond ring. "But I don't want to wait anymore. I've been waiting to find you my whole life." She stared at the ring, at this man who had shown her what love was supposed to look like. "I know you've been hurt, and I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm asking you to believe that the future can be different." Eleanor came running back up the steps, noticed what was happening. "What's that? Is that for Mommy?" David laughed. "That depends on what Mommy says." Meredith thought about her journey. The fall, the hospital, the trial. The slow climb back into the light. Every step had led her here. She thought about fear. She had been so afraid for so long. But she had also learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear. Courage was feeling afraid and moving forward anyway. "Yes," she said, David's face transformed. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." Eleanor cheered. "Mommy said yes." David slid the ring onto Meredith's finger. "I love you," he said. "I love your strength and your kindness and your courage. I love you too, and I'm terrified, and I'm choosing to do this anyway. That's the bravest thing anyone's ever said to me." The sun was setting over the ocean, pink and gold and orange. Meredith looked at her daughter, at the man she loved, at the life she had built from the ashes. The fall didn't break her. The betrayal didn't break her. The man who was supposed to love her tried to break her, and failed. She had survived 22 marble steps. She had survived a shattered marriage. She had survived the discovery that everything she believed was a lie, and now she was standing on the other side, stronger, wiser, more herself than she had ever been. Final value lesson. And that's the story of Meredith Collins, a woman who fell 22 steps and rose 1,000 miles higher than she ever was before. Here's what I want you to take away from this story. First, trust your instincts. That feeling in your gut that something is wrong, that's not paranoia. That's your survival instinct. Listen to it. Second, build your network before you need it. The women in your life, your sisters, your friends, your colleagues, they are your lifeline. Don't let anyone convince you to cut them off. Third, leaving is possible, even when it feels impossible. Even when you have no money, no job, no support. There are people who will help you. There are resources available. You are not as trapped as they want you to believe. Fourth, recovery takes time. Meredith didn't heal overnight. She didn't trust again overnight. She did the work, day by day, and she rebuilt her life piece by piece. And finally, you are not defined by what happens to you. You are defined by how you respond to it. Meredith Collins fell down 22 marble steps. She lost everything she thought she had, and she built something better from the ruins. If she can do it, so can you. Final call to action. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, if it made you cheer, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me what part shocked you the most. Was it the footage? The phone call to her mother? Or Preston's silence when Sloane talked about accidents? And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because every week, I bring you stories just like this one. Stories of betrayal and justice. Stories of women who refuse to stay down. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Someone who might be going through their own battle. Someone who needs to know that falling down doesn't mean staying down. Thank you for staying until the end. You are the reason I tell these stories. Until next time.